All right, so our next lesson is about ecosystems. So what are ecosystems and why do we care about them? Well, ecosystems are about connections. So definition for you, ecology is a branch of science that studies the relationship between living things and the environment. It's about relationships between things that live in a specific area. All right, now ecosystems are composed of two major components, right? Biotic and abiotic. So biotic means living, and that's what the bio part of biotic means. So biotic means living. So biotic means any living part of an ecosystem. So things that might eat each other, things that might defend themselves against each other, things that might compete for living space, they might compete for mates, and they might compete for food. Abiotic means non-living. Now, here is the confusing part, potentially, for some students. That does not mean dead. That includes dead, but it does not mean dead. All right, so biotic means living, things that are alive. Abiotic means parts that could provide things like nutrients, or water, or shelter and heat. So some examples are water, air, sunlight, temperature, soil, carbon dioxide. These are all things that are not alive, but they're also not dead either. The sun isn't dead. The sun is a non-living thing. All right, so there's a difference there. So remember, biotic means anything that is alive. Abiotic means literally everything else. So it could be something that is dead, but it also could be the rock or the water, the lake. Okay? Now, let's look at some examples. So you tell me, is this biotic or abiotic? Well, it's the sun, so that's abiotic. How about this? We have a tree. Try to remember, living is biotic, non-living or never alive to begin with would be abiotic. So tree is living, so that's biotic. How about this one? We've got water. We don't see anything else here, it's just water. Well, that's not living, so that's abiotic. Temperature. Is temperature alive? No, that's abiotic. The soil. Now here's where we're going to have to look really closely. If we're just talking about the soil, then that's abiotic. There's nothing living there. But what if we're talking about what's living in the soil? What if we're talking about worms or soil bacteria? All right? So we've got to be clear about what we're talking about. In this case, we're just talking about the soil, so that would be abiotic. How about this? Well, you probably don't recognize what this is, but this is, I just mentioned in the last one, this is what's called soil bacteria. This is a living creature. All right, so this would be biotic. How about this? Well, we've got a whole bunch of bugs here. Those are living, so those are obviously biotic. What's the surface that they're on? Well, it's a little hard to tell. It might be metal, then it would be abiotic. It might be wood. Would that be biotic or abiotic? Well, is it living now? Well, then it's abiotic. All right. We have the clouds. We have the sky. That's just air, atmosphere. That's abiotic. We have a bear sitting at a picnic table. This is biotic. All of this stuff around it is biotic. The picnic table would be abiotic because it's non-living. It's made of wood, which comes from a tree, which at one point was alive, but it's not alive now. So that's abiotic. How about this? Well, the prominent features here are these giant rocks, the sky, the air, the dirt, right? All of that is abiotic. But we also have in here some trees, some shrubs. We have some people. Those are biotic. And so in this image, we've got a combination of both. How about this? Well, except for the clothes that we see on this child, everything else here is living. We've got trees, we've got grass, we've got a baby. All of them are biotic, but this hat, the clothing, those are all abiotic. All right, so the next thing is looking at what are called terrestrial and aquatic ecosystems. Well, in order to understand how they interact with each other, we need to know what they are. So terrestrial comes from terra, which is land or earth, and that's an ecosystem that is existing mostly or entirely on land. So we have here an example where if we look just at this space, it looks like it's kind of a pretty good mix of water and land. It's a little hard to tell. But if we were to look at a whole forest and there was a small stream running through it, well, we would say that forest was mostly land. It's mostly terrestrial. There is some water in there, but it's mostly terrestrial. It's mostly land. So that would be a terrestrial ecosystem. Whereas if we were to zoom in and look just at the water in this, if we were to look just at this stream, well, then we would be calling this an aquatic ecosystem. And aquatic comes from aqua, or water. All right? So some examples of terrestrial, things like forests, deserts, an ant colony, a human city. Those are all terrestrial ecosystems, and we count. All right? We are part of these ecosystems. Whereas an aquatic ecosystem would be a pond, a lake, a river, or an ocean. Okay? All right. So that's it for this one. The next question is going to be, why are these important? Why do we care about those? And here's a hint. We are going to be looking back at what we saw in the first lesson and talking about biodiversity. But for now, that's it for this lesson. So if you go back to the Brightspace page, there is a link to a worksheet in the assignments area for you to complete.